of our society's ill-being. It is evident in a host of daily differences: life chances and opportunities, health and longevity, social comfort and inclusion, and in disparities. Disparities in education, law enforcement, incarceration rates, and wealth distribution. Many of us have been socialized to assume that these disparities are natural, inevitable, or simply a testament of hard work by some, rather than being socially constructed, consequences of particular decisions, beliefs, assumptions, patterns of caring and of not caring, now embedded in the everyday social arrangements that all of us are a part of, bar none. What if Marjorie and I could construct an anti-racism curriculum showing the linkage between current disparities and the racial legacy we have all inherited? What would it mean for anti-racism workshop participants to be able to talk about race and racism as a legacy, an asked for but nevertheless received legacy, a legacy of unasked for beliefs and assumptions and worldviews and stereotypes and feelings, a legacy in the form of ideas and social arrangements we received external to who we are, and something we did not necessarily choose. Received social arrangements and ideas that our society accepts as normative, conventional, and unproblematic. A social order that was imposed on us, not really us, yet somehow and always influencing us, habituated in us, conventional in our everyday life because it came to us through our society's mother milk. Could race dialogue, framed in this way, lift participants from the muck of unproductive guilt and shame? Could it free participants to risk conversation? Conversation about how we have come to have these racial feelings and stereotypes that we hold, whatever they may be, relieved of disabling anxiety. Might we become free to talk about the harm that racism has done to us all, ready to cleanse our bloodstreams of its poison, ready to identify and be accountable for the unasked for legacy, ready to be called repairer of the breach, restorer of the place where we may live. Through such a curriculum of dialogue and study, Marjorie and I hope to contribute to healing and compassion, to empathetic understanding, and the elimination of racism. Years ago, I began this work with questions, with an optimistic belief in the basic goodness of people and a belief in the possibility of people's overcoming fear to acknowledge and own our racial legacy. I believe that people could break their silence about racism. I believe that and still believe it. Such beliefs were well-founded. I am now sustained by evidence that what we do is healing, offering an alternative worldview that can humanize and empower. With this understanding, I welcome each day in a spirit of peace and contentment, without anxiety, thankful for the possibility my profession offers. In responses spontaneously given and given in evaluation surveys, participants tell us the ASDIC experience is transformative. And we actually see participants applying what they learn in the ways they come to talk about and analyze issues. Informed by wider perspectives, at ease in difficult conversations, willing to name the racial dynamics at play, better able to form community and organize for action across ethnic and racial lines. And so we see, indeed, some kind of transformation has taken place. We take heart in this. But until now, not until the weeks leading up to this Summit of Sages conference, not until now have we sought to definitively name the features of the ASDAC program that most contribute to the transformation that we see. We now understand the elements leading to personal transformation to include relationship. The creation of a dialogue culture that communicates respect and acceptance, compassion and empathy. Exploration. Opportunities for a care-filled examination of the inner and outer terrain of ideas and judgments and feelings and actions and their causes and effects. Praxis. A philosophy, a pedagogy that values reflection, critical analysis, emotional expression, and the transfer of learning into action planning. Intention. Holistic, purpose-driven objectives informed by sociological theory and therapeutic practices. Yes, all this, but what readiness for transformation must the participants bring to the table? Our experience tells us that we can offer the possibility of transformative experience to those who come to the circle as a free choice. Those who are able to at least entertain the notion that certain particulars about the world may be different from how they currently imagine them to be. ASDIC circles do not work for individuals or groups who are absolutely convinced that their reading of history is certain truth, above question or critique. For such people, we can offer tolerance and compassion. And so, in particular circumstances, transformation is indeed possible. And we can come to know an answer to the question, how can I become transformed? Yes, if we rephrase the question to, how do we together become transformed? What then is the source of my professional joy? My joy lies in seeking an answer to a question that lies deep within myself or another. My joy comes from practicing a profession that allows me to live in a mode of exploration and ongoing inquiry. to find and enjoy tentative, partial answers until better answers come along. To see these, to be in partnership with others who can be on the journey of exploration with me, having companions in this struggle. To see these companions delight as they gain clarity on how and why their social world is as it is, and how we have all become groomed to fit into this world, and to witness their conviction, their morally joyful conviction that they can challenge this received legacy, confront the consequences of that legacy, and now participate in collective efforts to create a more humane, just social order. Create a legacy of caring, a legacy of mutuality. This gives me joy. As teacher, facilitator, and caregiver, I can be truly myself, a compassionate healer, restorer of the breach, a restorer of the breach. All this gives me joy.
Can you guys hear me? Is my mic on? It is? Okay, good. Before I begin, I just wanted to personally thank you, Joanne, for choosing me to be one of the sages. I am a little bit intimidated because I realize that I'm one of the youngest ones here. So I did my best to write the speech, and I hope that everyone, especially the nurses here, can connect to it. And without much ado, I'll go ahead and begin. Sister Mary Loretta once said, "In order to be successful, you must first fall in love with your work." I found this quote befitting because professional joy is similar to the concept of love. Because when you are in love, you always have that sense of contentment and fulfillment, even in the most trying of times. I love being a nurse. And beyond that plethora of orders, alarms, codes, blood, sweat, and tears, there is and has always been professional joy in nursing. Professional joy stems for a variety of reasons for people. But for those of us who chose nursing, I learned that to have meaningful professional joy, it had to be founded upon strong foundations. And this involved having a strong sense of dedication to my patients, a conviction to nurture every moment of life that is crippled or lost, the spirit to know that my actions do make a difference, and most importantly, the principle to practice nursing well, no matter the outcome. Now, nursing is a powerful profession, and I've learned that people generally do not have a comprehensive understanding of this power, and to some extent, I can understand why. Oftentimes, we lose sight of our professional joy all too easily. Maybe it was from never feeling good enough, or rather feeling unappreciated among the rest of the team. But I've also learned that this is a matter of perspective. You see, people recognize a physician's skill because they can fix what is visibly broken, order pain medications to alleviate pain, and even discover a cure. And yes, they do some fantastic work. But I also have always made this point to tell all nursing students and nurses alike this: the life-saving and life-optimizing effect you provide to all patients under your care often go unacknowledged, not so much because you are undervalued in any way, but because they are acts of prevention and thus principle. Will that sedated patient in the ICU ever realize that I saved them from a sentinel event? Or will that physician ever realize how much care coordinating I had to go through to streamline all the tests, fix the order in the EMR again, and coax the patient into complying with the treatment plans before the patient made a big scene? Probably not. How are they supposed to if you prevented something bad from happening? You see, as nurses, we do what is simply right for the patient, and not because we seek praise each time we ask. And this is principle. And this is just not ever easily acknowledged, nor are they always supposed to be. People don't fully recognize this what nurses do because we are inherently designed to anticipate needs before it's requested. We are intuitively connected to our patients, so we always keep them informed and alleviated. We're naturally skillful in ensuring comfort and respect, and we are instinctively keen at the prevention of harm in sentinel events. We do all of this simultaneously, behind the scenes, warming the environment with our nursing touch among this hectic and clinical world. And it's a constant challenge, but we work hard to make it make sense for others without them even realizing it. So you see, nursing can be difficult to capture because we provide just as much compassionate care as we do with our scientific processes. And this is the beauty in nursing, and I find deep joy in working in such an honorable profession. I once had to care for a patient who had a post-operative pain after her kidney transplant. The family were not kind. They were anxious, worried about their daughter, frustrated with the hospital experience. And here they came to me, freshly discharged from the hospital, where I had a chance to take care of their concerns and pains. Difficult situations make us want to be there a little less often sometimes. But I sensed their anxiety and provided as much information as I could. I repeated it several times if I had to, and just remained present in the room for as much as I could. Well, the next day, the mother and father, who were very stoic the day before, approached me, and the mother hugged me, and she was in tears. She said that last night was the first night they could sleep in weeks because someone, such as I, was finally able to reassure them that their daughter will indeed be okay. I'll never forget that look in her eyes. They were the same grateful and teary eyes from the lady I saw 10 years ago, from a frail and forgotten lady in a nursing home whom I was hand-feeding when I was a nursing assistant. So I've learned that the most important thing in caring for someone is to anticipate what is not being asked, what is not being seen, and what is not being heard. I find joy in knowing that we do all of this already as a nurse, instinctively, and know that our skills greatly influence the totality of the patient experience. A classmate said it best: when people are so grateful about something so ordinary, I am reminded, though, to me, my job is ordinary. To the patient, it is extraordinary. Now, nursing is also a generous profession. I know of no other profession that gives so much to its patient as well as to the nurse who provided the care. My patients always teach me to have gratitude and trust. I've taken care of very ill patients who are drowning in medical bills, and yet they come by and stop by and give us a gift. Nursing continuously teaches me to be a better person every day. It reminds me to listen longer, to be more patient, to have more courage, and to become wiser. How can you not find professional joy in a profession that has such a reciprocal and holistic effect? And I'm always disheartened when my fellow nurses tell me that I'm going on to bigger and better things by going to grad school for my nurse practitioner degree. This insinuates that increased autonomy or salary will equal to more recognition and thus satisfaction. But the root of the problem is not realizing already how much influence you have as a nurse. The unit is at your fingertips, and with the right resources, you can redesign how you work, and you don't need any fancy credentials after your name to do it. As a nurse, I reorganized the supply chain for the ICU unit I once worked on, not because I wanted the fame, but because I wanted nursing to work much more efficiently in order to provide better care for our patients. Once I changed the way we organized our unit, our daily stresses in our workflow decreased, and I enjoy this as a nurse. A month ago, we were all asked to share one memorable nursing moment in class. Many of my classmates either had a real good tearjerker or had way too many good ones to just share one. Each story built upon the next, and my heart swelled more and more as I could relate to each of them. Every happy, every sad moment only further affirms my professional joy. Arthur Ashe once said, "From what we get, we can make a living. What we give, however, makes a life." And this rings true for nursing. In 2007, I embarked my nursing journey towards professional joy. 5 years later today, I stand before you to say that the path has been and will always be a great one for nursing. Thank you.
Thank you. 。 .
「 I'm so happy to be here. I realize I can't be joyous because that's a collective thing now, not born of self. But I'm tremendously happy to be here. Thank you so much, Joanne, for the invitation. I mean, what a treat to be here. I kind of almost forgot I was going to speak because I was so intent. And, I've never been part of something like this. I've never been at a conference like this that looks so deeply to the heart of things, and that's really very special. So I might have to come back every time now. This is part of what wants me to be a nurse wannabe. As a physician, you are another reason, quite frankly. Thank you for all your comments. I was reflecting on, the Ode to Joy, and thank you for playing it, by the way, today, and the ingredients that converged, in me and in us collectively that might contribute to that. And I was reminded of a story, and it's a story that has a parable in it that talks about something that comes from a scarcity perspective and then something that actually comes from a very abundant perspective. So I'm going to share this with you. It's from one of the books of a physician teacher I love, Rachel Naomi Remen, who may have touched your lives as well. And it's in a chapter called Grace. She talks about her patient, a physician who had cancer, who came to his session enormously pleased with himself one day. He knew her love of stories, and he said he found a perfect story, and he told her the following parable. Shiva and Shakti, a divine couple in Hinduism, are in their heavenly abode watching over the earth. They are touched by the challenges of human life, the complexity of human reactions, and the ever-present suffering in human experience. As they watch, Shakti spies a miserably poor old man walking down the road. His clothes are shabby, his sandals are tied together with rope. Her heart is wrung with compassion. Touched by his goodness and his struggle, Shakti turns to her divine husband and begs him to give this man some gold. Shiva looks at the man for a long moment. "My dearest wife," he says to Shakti, "I cannot do that." Shakti's astounded. "What do you mean? You are Lord of the universe. Why can't you do this one simple thing?" "I cannot give this to him because he is not yet ready to receive it." Shiva replies, and Shakti becomes very, very angry. "Do you mean to say you cannot drop a bag of gold in his path?" "Surely I can," Shiva replies, "but that is quite another thing." "Please, husband," says Shakti. And so Shiva drops a bag of gold in the man's path. The man, meanwhile, walks along thinking to himself, "I wonder if I will find dinner tonight, or shall I go hungry again?" Turning a bend in the road, he sees something on the path in his way. "Aha," he says, "look there, a large rock. How fortunate that I have seen it. I might have torn these poor sandals of mine even further." And carefully stepping over the bag of gold, he goes on his way. It seems like life drops many bags of gold in our paths. Rarely do they look like what they are. And then Rachel Remen asked her patient, "Has life ever dropped a bag of gold that he has recognized and used to enrich your life?" He smiled at her and said, "Cancer," simply. "I thought you'd guessed." So what creates the difference between those two perspectives? That of the miserable old man or the joyous nature of a man with end-stage cancer. As I reflected on that, I wondered, gosh, maybe in our scientific way there's some genetic predisposition. Maybe there's some joy gene, out there somewhere, and some of us are predisposed. That might be true. We don't know. But then I thought, there's some things that I can think of that actually create and influence that, both as they had for me personally, I think they have for us collectively, and I think it's our obligation to pass those things along. And so I thought of three that did that. There's influencers in life. There's positive influencers. None were mentioned in the parable for the man, for the miserable old man. But there's some that approach their work with loving wonder and almost magic. So there's those influencers. There's opportunities, and then there's recognition of those opportunities. He had an opportunity, but it wasn't one that he was ready to recognize. So that's another factor in this, opportunity and the ability to recognize it. And then, obviously, in a theme that is run throughout this is there's interrelationship and connectivity. That's inherent in all of work and life. And he was completely alone on the earth without recognition of any kind of human relationship in the parable, and without any kind of recognition of even some larger relationship that he might have been a part of as these divine Hindu spirits were watching over him. So influence, opportunities, and recognition, and the wrap of powerful relationships seem to be the things that really have led to at least my own personal and professional joy, and I'm sure many of you. Now, I can talk about each one of those separately, and I can talk about influencers, and I got to tell you, a whole lot of them are right here in this room. Brian, fabulous mentor and influence. Joanne, Terry, Julianne, Sheila, I can go on and on. There's tons in this room that are influences. Parker Palmer once asked at a session I was at, he said, how many of you, wherever you have made it in life, has had the help of one or two people? And he said, then, I won't ask those of you who have made it alone. I'll just remind you to take your meds. So for me, actually, the person that was most influential in my life, and I'm sure this is true of many of you, was my mother. My mother had no resume. She never got any paid work when at least during the time since I was born. Yet she was my role model for professional joy. And it was because everything she did, she approached every task which would seemingly be meaningful, she'd approach with some kind of magical way and make it, it was kind of like that spoonful of sugar thing, you know? So, she would, if she was making a dinner for 12 people, she'd have a pots and pans band that accompanied it sometime for us to go with her. If she was getting bothered by too many raucous 3 young children in the house, she had convinced us that if we went out in the front yard and took a salt shaker, and if we could sprinkle salt on a bird's tail, we could tame it. That took us hours. Again. So, if I got ready for school and was a little bit late, I either heard Grieg's Death March on the piano, or she came up and we did a tango to the front door, down. She would be magical at night. She'd read me these bedtime stories, but she'd do it in the complete darkness. Of course, I thought she was magic. She had memorized the books. I was the last of 3. And, so she could do Horton Hatches the eggs and turn the pages at the appropriate time. And I thought that was really something. And she also, and Paul, you did this for us today, she would teach lessons through poetry. And it seemed like that greatest generation did a whole lot better job of reciting poetry and remembering it. And I remember one time being an angsty 13-year-old and trying to figure out, how to navigate through these cliques and where I was going to fit, because I liked a little bit of all of them and just kind of tearing you apart. And she was trying to tell me that what seemed big now is actually small, and what seems small is actually quite big. And so she also cited Wendell Berry, and I remember the end of that poem was, pray not for new earth or heaven, but to be quiet in heart and in eye clear. What we need is here. So that was the influence that I had, and I've had several others, but that was a powerful piece to come into. And then there's opportunities and recognition. Well, my mother was a wonderful influence. She was also very prescient. So I'm an obstetrician gynecologist. She gave me at age 11 LaBoyer's book about birth without violence. So she was prescient, because I didn't even recognize that I was interested in that until I went to high school and told my high school English teacher, yet another influencer, gosh, what do you want to be in life? And I replied to her, well, I want to be a photographer. She said, that will be a very nice hobby for you to have. But I don't think that you can, that's the right work for you. I want you to come back to me and tell me what ingredients that you have that you think you could make most work. And so I came back to her and I said, well, I really like to learn. And I really like science, and I really like things that involve human understanding. And she said, okay, I'll give you a place where you can stay into school a whole long time, and you can combine those two things. And hence, as a sophomore, influenced by that English teacher, I decided to become a physician and stuck to it. And wow, what a lucky thing. I mean, the profession that we're involved in is of great fortune. I mean, I've been lucky enough to hundreds of times have new lives in my hands, being the first one to hold them as an obstetrician. My friends think this is really weird, but for those of you who have been in the operating room, the beauty and the window you get into somebody's body, and I'd open up the retroperitoneal tissue and see this alveolar tissue, and good thing I could continue on with the surgery because I was so mesmerized by the sparkliness of that tissue, and things like that. So that's a tremendous thing. And I was also struck by those small things remaining big. And one of the biggest things I'll remember is when I had a patient having a perfectly normal labor, and then she got an epidural and had a pulmonary event. We think it was an amniotic fluid embolism. That's one thing you usually recognize on a postmortem exam. And luckily she didn't die from that event, but her baby needed to be delivered very quickly. And I was into all the technical aspects of how to make sure that we were, keeping her alive and breathing well enough and doing that while we were trying to deliver this baby at the same time through assisted vaginal delivery with some forceps at that time. We got the baby out quickly. Baby was doing very, very well. The woman was survived, yet was comatose at the time. And the thing I will remember most about the whole event, and the thing that her husband remembers most about the whole event, was what I saw that was happening in the next room. And that was her husband sitting with a nurse holding his hand. And I will never forget the way their hands were even juxtaposed, because that was the most important thing that could be done in that time. And that's why those little things are so small. So what a lucky thing to be involved in all these things, recognize that, and from that point forward, I never held a new life without recognizing what a bigger part and what a privilege this was, and getting over the technical expertise of things. And that was a part of that joy. And now, in helping others to support them and how they can give the best care, that's my role as Chief Clinical Officer, is to support others in their caregiving. What a treat that is. My patient said to me I still practice half a day a week, and one of my patients says, okay, I finally get it. You used to work for people you know, and now you're trying to work and help people you don't know. And I said, yeah, that's it. And isn't that lucky, And it has been. So that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. It took a big risk to go into that, and away from the patients that I had been my best teachers and that I love so dearly. And I was clinically depressed for the first year I made the switch. And now I'm so grateful to be part of something that can have that scale. And then the last thing I'll just mention is the relationship wrap. So if it's, I think that one of my favorite teachers, and for many of us, is Don Berwick as well. And he said, I think that healthcare is more about love than most things. It's at its core the relationship with two people who are deeply engaged together and helping each other and supporting their health and relieving their suffering. That's relationships, and that's lucky. So what can we do to foster those relationships, that broader connectivity that surrounds that core relationship, and how do we build that joy for others? So I'm going to go back to Mom, because when my mother was dying, and she died about 8 years ago now, 2 days before she died, she said to me, I think yours is the last face I want to see before I die. And what a gift that was. I think she felt like I was the only one in medicine, by the way, in our family. So I think she might have felt I had a bigger comfort level. I don't think she was telling me I was her favorite, even though I like to think that maybe. But I think that was a real gift. And 2 days later, my mom, it was the time when I was only time the whole day that I was in the room alone with my mother when she died. And right before she died, she said, just to the words of the Wendell Berry poem, she said, "It's all right here." And I would say that that's true of this room. It's all right here. All the influence and the positivity you can create for others, all the look at their work that you can do, and recognize the awe in what we get to be a part of, and the interconnectivity that can make this better for individuals and the broader community and the world. So thank you so much for letting me be part of it. I know that my happiness level has raised, and I suspect strongly that our collective joy will raise after these 2 days and beyond. Thank you.
What amazing stories. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I was jotting down words, and so I could make my own Wordle now out of a lot of different things. But what strikes me is there is a lot of invitation, inviting and responding to invitations, extending invitations and supporting invitations. There's a lot about intuition. There's a lot about intention. There's a lot about purpose. There's a lot about interprofessional. There's a lot about being impactful, making a difference. There's the struggle with the wicked questions, and there is the insight that you get from feedback from people in terms of knowing what to do and what not to do. And what struck me most is the notion about legacy, how we are influenced and shaped by those legacies, but then also the question remains, what story will people tell about you after you're gone in terms of the impact and the influence that you have in your day-to-day work? So I think the original plan was that the sages were going to have a dialogue among themselves, but I think that the time is getting short. But I would like to invite the audience now to share any comments or observations or questions you might have for them. Very powerful stories. I think we have some microphone people, some Phil Donahue. You laugh. I was at MOLN last week, and I asked Mike Scoba to be my Phil Donahue, and all these young people were sitting around the table saying, "Who's Phil Donahue?" So I knew there was a generation shift there. Who's Phil Donahue? Questions?
Hi, Teddy Potter from the School of Nursing. I am struck by how each one of you has not found joy through the superficial. You've found joy through the deep, oftentimes hard work of plunging into some of life's largest issues. And so would you comment on that? Because I think sometimes people hear joy and they think you're just skimming along the top like a skipped stone. And I didn't hear that in any of your stories. So how would you encourage the next generation of healers and healthcare providers and public health workers to understand that our work that goes deep is exactly what we're talking about today?
I think we make a mistake if we associate joy with constant well-being and with happiness, ongoing happiness. I think there's a close connection, and I also saw this in some of the material that was given to us in the earlier lecture, that there's a connection between joy and overcoming challenges. Joy needs to be the friend of loss. Joy needs to be the friend of a struggle. Joy needs to be the friend of all of these human emotions that are challenging. And somehow, in the ways that we meet those challenges, in the ways that we find a way through it, or simply deal with it in an ongoing way, that's where the joy is. And so I think it's important to realize that joy is not something that is alien to these challenging, difficult issues in life. It's in those issues that we need to find the joy.
And I was just going to kind of add to that was, for me, I think a lot of, especially for like young nurses, a lot of it is also just the attitude that you walk into the environment in, knowing fully well of what you have decided to become, whether it's a nurse or a physician or a respiratory therapist. My joy, I was trying to exude in the speech that I wrote, is that it had to exist on its own and it's self-sustaining. I was really trying to get at, because in my past 5 years of experience, a lot of people, I just think that we live in a culture of instant gratification. And so when it's not given, and then people start to have these kind of expectations about what is really successful, and therefore how do I feel joy. And So I think that sometimes we just need to shift the way we perceive that and make informed decisions of really what role would make us happy and feed towards that joy. It's that you just find something that you feel a strong, deep sense of commitment, and something that you know that if you had a second chance, you do it all over again. That in itself, in its way, is self-sustaining joy. It blooms on its own. It's not because you're doing something for some sort of accolade or praise afterwards.
But I think also we can ask people to reflect. We all talked about people in our lives that actually caused us to reflect. I mean, we all know, the young faculty member who's focused solely on the articles getting written, not on this problem they're solving, or the young staff nurse who's focused on the tasks to get done in this period, not the larger issues of the care and how it could be improved and how you could make it better. But we all can ask each other those questions, because actually the bigger issues are the only thing that elicit our passion for long term. So you wrote another paper, so what if it's not to some larger end?
I would add, your question that at least as I understood it, is how do we get to that deeper sense of joy? And maybe it's like when we talk of prevention, primary, secondary, and tertiary. Maybe we need to accept, introduce, celebrate that there may be primary, secondary, and tertiary professional joy. Because the instant gratification is real, and it's powerful, and we should celebrate it. The instant gratification is only a piece of the puzzle. So where does that piece of the puzzle contribute to incremental gains? And then the other is, and thank you for the word legacy. I think that's the other. And that's the very, very hard to fully understand unless you can celebrate others' successes, as everyone up here has mentioned or looked to someone in the room that meant the world to them and that changed their life and affected their lives. And that is, I think, part of the legacy issue. I was comforted early on with the idea that we all have an impact on individuals. Now we recognize that a baby that's born has some part of its personality is already established by genetics, by the intrauterine environment. At the same time, we're influenced by every individual with whom we interact. Every individual. You don't lose that memory. It gets stored, and it affects your neural networks. So I can look back and realize that I am, in a sense, the product of everyone with whom I've ever interacted. That was something that gave me great cause for pause. It also, in my career, having worked in a lot of different sectors and different jobs, I realized that I could never predict with whom I was going to be working with, or would be working for me. And so it helped me develop, in a sense, a positive approach to say, what can I contribute to this interaction? And then recognize that somehow that was going to have an impact down the line and celebrate it.
I think that I want to just emphasize your point about inviting it. I think inviting it is really important. I was struck by that in a couple ways. Sometimes I'll have people come in for reviews or something, or we'll just have one-on-one conversations. They'll say, what are you really most passionate about? And they'll say, well, nobody has really asked me that before. Or the other day I got a chance at a recognition event to say a few words, and the CEO of our health system happened to be there. And he relayed that to our leadership team, and he said, and she used the word love twice.